Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 57 of ZK Live. Tonight we have Chris Ermides. Not sure how to pronounce his last name. We're going to find out in a minute. He is a editor and producer at This Old House. He has a podcast himself. It's called Ask This Old House. He is a lifelong, passionate craftsperson. We're going to bring him on right now.
Nice.
Hello, sir.
Hello. It's
In a
good to see you.
freshly painted room that I happen to know you painted yourself, thanks to Instagram.
I did, and the drips are right in that shadow line right there.
It's a good place for them.
Yeah,
I was impressed to see you tackle it. That's
well, I'm not afraid of trying many things, and I had to use that I had that Graco. Is it Graco or Graco? Graco.
I say Graco.
Great. You say Graco. Okay. So I had that sprayer, and it seemed like a good thing for it. It's a tiny room, as you probably could tell, and it seemed all manageable. So it came out all right. It's not, you wouldn't probably want to charge. You probably wouldn't feel comfortable charging anybody for it, but it's my own house, and it's ultimately a rental. So I think it's probably better than what most people are going to see here.
And what's on it is a true enamel, and for that I'm very happy.
Oh yeah.
I really like to see that you use the paint that will actually dry hard. And if depending on what you're going to do aesthetics wise, it's all not as important as, is your trim paint going to stay sticky forever?
Yeah, I'm amazed. I use this stuff. I used it on that other cabinet in my kitchen, and the paint store near me, My Colorize, they were the ones that recommended it, and I'm very happy with it. I love it. Yeah. It's definitely it's tough to spray, but it's tough for me to spray. It's probably not tough for you to spray, but it's tough for me to spray.
No, it is. We've definitely had issues. It's advanced for everyone who's wondering, which is a great product for trim.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's because of its slow dry time. It's not, it's not the easiest product to spray.
Yeah, I had worse time with the I used the bonding primer, Benjamin Moore's Sticks, I think it is.
Yep.
That bonding primer. Mauro Enrique suggested it, and it's because I have there's a lot of issues in this house with bad prep work before me, and I like it does stick to everything, but it too is really difficult to spray well.
Yeah.
I had a lot of runs in that one.
What size tip did you use?
The 4 is the lower the number, the smaller, or
the first number is the fan width of the pattern, and then the next 2-digit number is the size of the orifice.
So with that gun, there's only one number. It's a plastic tip. And it was like 4 or 12 were the options, and I used whichever one was the smaller fan. I think it's the 4. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I think I got to clean that gun a little better. It didn't do an amazing job. Anyway, I don't mean to keep going down the rabbit hole.
No, this is a paint podcast, man.
Nobody cares about my. Nobody cares about how the process of me painting. You're the expert. Nobody cares what I have to say about it.
Well, as the expert, I can tell you I was very happy to see that you had masked off everything well. You had your respirator, and more than anything, you were using a true enamel on the trim, because way too often we see semi-gloss paint going on trim as a universal trim paint, and there's a lot of paints that are semi-gloss sheen that are not enamels, and they will stay sticky and soft for their entire life. We've all touched that trim and door that's sticky and soft, and they could have just used a true enamel for a marginal increase in cost, if any, and had durable, beautiful trim.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good point. Yeah, the sticky part is I need to remember that when people are asking me about the difference. Yeah, that's a really good.
There's nothing worse than that feeling of like,
no,
ugh.
I hate it, and it's in most of my house.
Yeah,
but I didn't.
Because if that's true, you didn't do it, and I can't tell you how many times I've been at the paint store, and the paint store will tell people, oh, it's semi-gloss, put that on your trim.
Mm-hmm.
Even really high quality wall paint that's semi-gloss, expensive, but it doesn't belong on trim.
Yep.
And so I was really happy about that. But I think now that I've learned more about you, we know that you have a painting background. So it makes it all make a little more sense.
Yeah. Are you out? Do you want me to talk about that for a
Yeah,
second? Is that
yeah.
so? I worked at a hardware store, small town hardware store in the town where I grew up in Guilderland, New York, just outside of Albany. And it's now an Ace Hardware, but then it was a mom and pop, like, family owned. And I worked for the sons of the guy that started it. And I worked there from my sophomore year in high school all the way through grad school, and nights, weekends, summers, all my weekends and summers in high school and college, I worked there. And we had a paint department. So I would, we sold Pittsburgh paints, and I forget what the other line was. It might have been Sherwin-Williams, although probably wouldn't make sense. This is a long time ago. And would mix paint and do all that, and then my boss then, when I was in college, wanted to start a painting company, because we would get people would come in all the time in the summers, like looking for painters, and we had painters come in regularly, and they were overwhelmed, so they didn't care, that there were going to be sort of some competition. So he had me start a paint company, and it was very short lived. I did it for one summer, and I got way into that scraping stuff, and I hated it. That prep work is, I think what got me was I had to stain a deck on one job, and I had never done it before, and I used one of those pump sprayers, and I did a terrible job, and it blotched, and it was like, and I'm such a perfectionist, it just drove me crazy, and I didn't know enough to read and do, like, I wasn't like technical or interested in any of that stuff back then, because I was in college, and it did me in.
Yeah.
But
And so that story highlights something that we were just talking about earlier. I think that's a good representation of where the painting trade is and how it's been perceived for a long time.
mm-hmm.
Your boss owns a hardware store. He gets lots of people asking for paint, and he's like, I know what I'll do. I'll start a paint company, and I'll put my guy who's been mixing paint as a painter.
Exactly.
And like, that's the barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure people came in asking for electricians, and he didn't go, you know what? I'm going to start an electrical company now.
Yeah.
Right. And that is an unfortunate reality of the painting business, is the barrier to entry is low. And I think it is a hurdle that we're trying to overcome as an industry to kind of, I'm sad that it didn't work out, but also I'm kind of happy, because if it was easy enough to just start a paint company and flourish with minimal experience, we'd all be out of jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, I'm glad it didn't work out, but that's so true. And it hadn't really occurred to me until you mentioned it earlier, that's the case. And it's why, people think that just because it's a low barrier of entry, it's easy to do, and it's easy to do well. And like, those things couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, you are the perfect example of embodying what it means to be a craftsman and the work that you do. And there are others like you that I know personally, and we know Tim Leahy, Scott Burt, Nick Slavic, and Mauro Enrique, obviously, on our show. It's making it into a craft is a whole other thing. So anyway,
and a profession, a something I can be proud of. And what we talk about at the finishing school, it's like something where I'm going to use my brain and I'm going to spend some time thinking about painting. I'm not just going to act like it's as easy as show up, grab a bucket, and slop it on. Like,
Yeah.
let's, just like every other profession, is going to spend a little bit of time thinking about what they do and how they approach it and how to solve problems. And, you know, when the barrier to entry is low, I think it's easier to not spend that time.
What do you think that some of the I'm just thinking about, like, because you can go virtually anywhere and buy a can of paint and a paintbrush, and it's an relatively affordable thing to just do yourself. Do you think that just that alone is what makes it, like, makes people think that they can just jump in and do it? Or, like, where's the shift happen when people are looking at the surface prep directions and, you know, the chemistry and understanding the differences between enamel and latex, and not the difference between, because latex is enamel, right? Can be
It
enamel,
could
right?
be.
Yeah. So that was
Yeah.
the wrong. It was latex. Was it latex
And oil?
or enamel and oil? And
Latex and
oil, but
not enamel. Enamel.
not enamel. Okay. Where's acrylic fit into that mix?
Acrylic is a type of resin, and so you could have a trim paint be, and unfortunately, enamel is a subjective term. There's not like a hardness scale that they're
Okay.
like, well, when it's 45 degrees on the hardness scale, it becomes an enamel. But enamel connotates hardness of finish. Acrylic is a type of resin where you can have an acrylic wall paint that doesn't have an enamel quality, and you could have an acrylic trim paint that does.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, so when do, you know, what makes people look at those things and think about it more? I mean, I do, because I have access to you and Tim and Morrow, and, you know, and I had that background, you know, as a briefly as a painting contractor. I have awareness that those things exist and those differences exist, but I don't think most people know or even think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, unfortunately, the big box retailers and even the domestic paint manufacturers and like HGTV, they have all sort of, I think, aided in this process, and painters ourselves have not advocated enough for this stuff. But I think in general, we have somehow made it to the point where the goal of painting is to change the color of something.
Yeah.
and you know, with much less thought on how long is that going to last,
Mm-hmm.
and how functional will that be, and how beautiful will it be.
Yeah.
The goal is, like, is it white now? All right. And so I think I blame the manufacturers for having so many different paint lines. When you walk in and they have 9 different paints that are semi-gloss for interior, I think that they are understanding the market, and they're maybe not advocating for painters and the trade in general as
Mm-hmm.
much as they're trying to sell paint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I can go in and see all of these different levels of paint, I can pick the one that I think is best for me, and I can feel really good about my purchase. And I don't know. And then HGTV has definitely not helped with
Yeah.
this, just like snap your fingers and the paint changed, and, like, you know,
Yeah.
here, have the homeowner grab a roller and make these weird W shape, like funny shapes, start painting in the middle of the wall, and, like, you know, all the
Right.
things they do that they ignore. And,
Right.
you know, that's what we were talking about earlier. Like, I think what I'm doing with social media, what other people are, what This Old House does, is at least be a bit of an advocate for the thing of quality. Like, here's the things to look for. Here's, like, the big pitfalls. Like, if you're going to paint your own house, here are the few things that will cost you no more money that you might want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that public service announcement hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's well, definitely. I think that's one of the things that I love so much about social media and what's happening here. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but, like, this idea that people making things, letting people see what's possible, being good role models for younger people coming into the trades, like you are, like Mauro is, and Tommy and Jen and all those guys. Like that's what's so amazing about this. And just to fill folks in, like Zach and I were talking earlier about our careers, and I was just mentioning that, like, when I got started in the trades, it started when I was young. I was like 15, working at that hardware store, but I didn't have a lot of exposure to real craftsmen. The craftsmen that I saw were on this old house, and that was it. And now we get to see people every day on here, and you guys, you said, like, you've inspired hundreds of people in different parts of the country, and maybe even the world, who are just starting out, who are like, I want to work at a higher level. And you said something really interesting to me that I appreciate, that I want to just touch on. Your definition of craftsmanship, I thought, was pretty interesting. I hadn't thought about it in the way that you described it before, so I think you should. I'm not gonna do it justice, so you go for it. But I want to talk about it.
And I'm sure I heard this from someplace else, so I don't want to like own this concept. That's not, but because that's how all ideas are. But yeah, I was talking about, because the difference, like, some people might say that, I mean, people will say what I do is craftsmanship. It's high level craftsmanship. It is. And I think what the part of high level craftsmanship that people see is that I take the parameters that I am given, and I do the best of, I solve the problems to the best of my ability. So in this case, at a $6,000 gloss door, we're assuming the client has the budget. So I have an open budget to achieve awesome results. So within those parameters, I figured out how to make an automotive mirror style door. But we were talking about how I believe that craftsmanship is solving the problems based off the parameters you're given. So if a client has $1,200 for a front door, and you take all of your skill, your knowledge, your expertise, and you implement them to get a profitable $1,200 front door that the client loves, like, that's craftsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be achieving perfection, because not everyone has that parameter of an open budget.
Right, the budget, or even even the skill level either. I mean, I in this, anecdotally for me, in this room that I'm in, this little pantry, I like to think that, I mean, I employed not a Tom Silva or Norm Abram or Mauro or you level of craftsmanship, but I employed the craftsmanship that was at my disposal when I did this room and this work, and I think it stands the test of time, really. I mean, I think it fits. It fits in with it pays homage to the level of work that was done elsewhere in the house, before people came in and remodeled the other parts of it. But I had a budget of $500, and it was, the beadboard behind me is the MDF, thin MDF that I got at Home Depot, and nobody know, like, you can't tell. Nobody knows. And little things that I did, like notching, using my oscillating tool to tuck the beadboard behind the returns on the head casing, like stuff like that. Like, that's craftsmanship to me. That is, like, it took me a little extra time, but it's here forever now. But I didn't spend a ton of money, and I'm not a mad skilled carpenter either.
Yeah. But I think the key piece of this whole thing that you just described is that you thought about it. Like,
exactly.
You just told me you talked to Mauro about what type of primer, right? Yeah. You researched and you put energy into, how am I going to approach that? I didn't just look at it. You didn't just look at it like, oh, it's just paint, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And, that's craftsmanship, is doing the best with what you have.
Yep. Yeah, and thinking about it and looking and it's putting time and planning, like you said, and that's that's the thing that I didn't, those are the skills I didn't have when I was doing that deck 20 some odd years ago, when I didn't have the patience or the forethought or any of that to read the can and really plan and prep and do all that kind of stuff. Like I didn't have it. So it's true. It's so true. And that is that when you couple that idea with the idea that that there's this, what you said earlier, that I forget how you worded it, low level of entry, getting into the trade, low barrier entry. Sorry, thanks. It's been a long day. When you couple those two things, it's like, if you can get that idea into the people who are coming into the trade, who are just picking up a paintbrush, who are just starting out, and you can teach them to, and that's what it sounds like that's what you're doing. You're trying to do is get them to look at what they're doing, think about what they're doing, and develop those. Like that in itself is, I think, possibly the foundation of being a good craftsman, whether you're a plumber, electrician, painter, carpenter, framer, any of it is that just slowing down before you start and taking a lay of the land, thinking about all the details, thinking from the end and going at it in that way.
Which I always talk about that. I think carpentry and general contractors, like all the best ones, most of the ones I know, and all the best ones I know, they are incredibly methodical people, and they approach their, like, they always, there's like the analogy of the carpenter who doesn't move around fast on the job site is the guy that ends up doing more work in a day because he's being efficient, he's planning out his day. And these like high level carpenters, they're steady eddies. They're just like these guys. They show up, they make a plan, they execute. And that's not what I was taught, at least in the painting world. It was like, show up and as fast as you can get paint on there and just like work like a madman. And like, no one ever told me like, hey, or empowered me, as we try to do it at school. It's like, empower me to stop, think for a minute, and work a little more methodically.
Yep. No, exactly. That was my, when I was on a job every day, for years, that was the vibe. Like, get it done, caulk and walk, put the coping saw away, put the biscuit joiner away, it's like all that kind of stuff. So there is definitely that we're always fighting that. I mean, there's a lot of people who are in that mode. But I think, again, coming back to it, we on the show, I think, have for 41 years, since 1979, have been trying to show, illustrate what we're talking about, those practices, the craftsmanship, the methodical approach, careful approach, thinking through things and doing them right. I mean, that's Tom Silva. That's what he says. He's always about doing things right. And the thing, just a side note to that I love about him too, is that he's never advocating that his way is the only way. It's just, he recognizes that there are other ways to do things, but he, I think, respects the approach of craftsmanship of, if you're going to do it right, think about it, use the right materials, use the right skills, all that kind of stuff. But we have been illustrating that, and on the show have been trying to show that to folks for years. And I think that's why it's resonated so much with people, because of that authentic voice. And that's what's happening now on social media with you guys, with Schiffer, with I mean, so many. It's good stuff.
It is. And I mean, what this old house has done for the trades, I mean, it's unbelievable when you think about how many people they've inspired. And, they were a voice for contractors, and they were, like you said, they were showing what does good look like, or here's a thing that's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like the 4-minute mile. We always talk about it. Like, once you know that there's someone ran a 4-minute mile, magically a bunch of people run a 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I'm doing on social media is like just, yeah, do I show ultra high level craftsmanship in the way that of ultra high budget projects? Yes. But I hope through our captions and a lot of my stories, like, I'm showing a passion for my craft
Mm-hmm.
that I know has infected some other people, and it can be applied to all levels of budget. That's not the thing. You could be a craftsperson not have an unlimited budget.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
you can be proud to be a painter, and
Yep.
you can use your brain to solve problems on a daily basis and not just do things because that's the way you've always done them, and not have an unlimited budget. And This Old House has done an amazing job at showing people what's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I grew up watching it. Been a fan of it for my whole life. So I think that's getting back to it. Just to compare the show. I can't say we because I wasn't around then to have anything to do with it. But I like to say because I like I'm part of the I work for the brand and I'm very proud to be part of the brand. But This Old House launched that genre, the how-to genre. That we were the first to do it, and did it for many years, and the reason that it has lasted is because of that authenticity, because it's real contractors. We're not flying through things. We're not there's no camera work. There's no trick photography. There's no pan away while Tom Silva does, something quick and then pan back when it's done. Because it's like, this is real. This is it. Like, this is what if the camera was there, he'd be doing the same thing no matter what. Same, Mara would be doing the same thing. Jen would be doing the same thing. Heath would be doing the same thing. They all, like, everybody and I think that has resonated with people. And I think that same idea is why so many of you guys in the trades have so many followers, because people, it's the same thing. They want to see that. Why do awesome framers have over 100,000 followers? I mean, Tim Mueller is an awesome dude. They're fun. They're great. They're hilarious. And I'm sure part of it is because they want to people follow them to be entertained, but it's also because they're mindful about what they do. They're real craftsmen. Tim's a true gentleman, true craftsman, and you get to see him work on a daily basis. So I think it's the same. I think it's the same idea.
Yeah, and the key to their success and anyone's success on Instagram and on TV and really in the world is generally the authenticity. Like,
Yeah.
Especially in this saturated market of television now and Instagram for sure, like, people are attracted to other people, like real things. And we can smell BS from a mile away.
Yep.
And you better be pretty authentic in this day and age if you want any attention.
Absolutely. And somebody just Paint School just mentioned Zach Detmore, who's one of my favorites.
Me too.
He's talk about authentic and an authentic voice, and just an awesome guy. I've had the pleasure of working with Zach a bunch over the years. He does that. He's like, yeah. I remember he was showing a review of a nail gun, and he was talking about it and how it, he's like, oh well, it didn't really work. He just kind of threw it aside. He's like, I take that back. He's super honest and real.
Yeah. And one of the most unique human beings. Every time I watch his stuff, I'm like, that guy's brain is so special.
Yeah.
Did you see his Thanksgiving stories where he showed the before picture of a rough carpentry site, and then he showed a finished picture, and he had an arrow to an oven, and it said turkey.
Oh yeah.
It said no turkey, turkey,
Yeah.
no turkey, turkey.
Yeah.
Dude, I was dying. Like,
I know.
and he does that on a daily basis. So
I
if you
know.
guys aren't following Detmore 101, he's been on the show a long time ago. He's an absolute gem of an individual,
Yeah, he is.
and as authentic as it gets.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a phenomenal craftsman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Him and his crew. The whole thing. Yeah.
And magically, the guy's thinking a lot about what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like,
I was at Tools of the Trade. I'll just tell this hopefully real quick. I was at Tools of Trade and I was looking for a video on organizing tools, and I stumbled on a video of his. He had an old van and he created this whole elaborate, system in this old van. And then after that, he ended up buying a transit style van. I forget what kind. He's got a
Ram ProMaster.
Yeah, ProMaster. And what he did to that was unbelievable. And it was really incredible. And the level of thought, like you said, that went into doing it. And I brought him to, he was generous enough to speak at the remodeling show back when we were going to trade shows. He drove his van and did a presentation a couple days to the attendees there. And it was of all the ones that we did, his drew the most people. The most people stuck around, and people were astonished because he had a sustainer with drawers of paintbrushes and stuff. Like, he's so super organized, and he puts that thought. Hey Tim, Kirby Perkins just joined in. Looks like,
yeah,
another great guy.
How did you meet Tim?
How did I meet Tim? So I met Tim when I was an editor at Fine Home Building magazine. I just started. He sent in a submission for to refinish a floor. He wanted to do an article on refinishing a floor, and they were like, "That sounds interesting. Let's send the new guy." So they sent me out to Newport, Rhode Island. I probably was so new to the job that all my pants that I owned still had like dried caulk and dried paint and wood glue on them. Like, I was really fresh off the job site when they sent me out there. And I met Tim, and so I was an assistant editor. And first of all, amazingly, I consider him a very good friend. I've known him now for well over 10 years. Great human being, but the work that job, I had never seen anything like it. It was a mansion on the water. I'd never been around craftsmen at that level before. I'd never been around work at that level before. So I walked in trying to be cool and, calm, cool, and collected, and was just in awe. And having come off a job where, I think I was hanging, I was bending metal for a vinyl siding job probably a month before that. So, very different ends of the spectrum in terms of craftsmanship and budget. But anyway, so Tim was doing it was a billiard room, I think, in this house, and they were doing, I have to remember the article. It was quarter sawn white oak, herringbone, gorgeous floor, and he did I think a grain filler and a dye and a stain and then a clear coat, and my mind exploded. It was unbelievable. And funny aside story to that is, that was my first time being on the road. It was my first time being in a corporate job, having a corporate credit card, representing the company on the road. And I found myself in a situation. We were at dinner. We were having drinks at the Castle Hill Inn which I'm sure you know very well.
Yeah.
And Jerry
Fancy
Kirby.
place.
Yeah, Jerry Kirby was there, Tom Perkins, Tim and their wives, and we were having drinks, and we decided to go in for dinner, and I invited everybody to dinner because I felt like I should do that just to extend, just to be courteous, expecting that just Tim was going to join me, and they all said yes, and I was sweating the whole time, and then we went in there, and Jerry Kirby handed me the wine list, and I politely let him take care of choosing the wine because I knew I was way out of my element at that time. And anyway, long story short, the bill came and I almost fainted. And as I think about it now, I realized that he probably, knowing Jerry and what I know of him, he probably split the bill with me and I didn't even know it because I think the bill was 700, $800, but now I realize it probably should have been double that considering how many people were there. So Jerry, if you're listening, I appreciate the hospitality and generosity there. But anyway, I went home and called my girlfriend at the time at 2 a.m. and crying and told her I was going to lose my job. I said, I think I'm going to get fired. I didn't end up getting fired. They thought I was funny, but I haven't been back to the Castle Hill Inn since.
That was an expensive article.
What's an expensive article? But Tim, we got him on the cover. Well, one of his guys on the cover for that issue, and Tim we ended up doing some killer articles after that relationship. He was so fun to work with, and is another one like you, like a master craftsman. Really incredible.
He's every time I talk to him, I'm like, I don't know anything about painting. Like this guy, Tim is just on a level, and he's just like, he's a gem of a human being.
Yes,
his energy, his like, oh man,
yeah.
I can't get enough of that guy.
He
was on here not too long ago.
I know. I was watching. I tuned in.
We went deep down a rabbit hole for all the diehards.
It was great. It was great.
It was.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about your job at This Old House and what your role is, what you're up to. What does that look like now?
So to evolve, but right now my title is editor / digital content producer. And can you hear me? It's
yeah.
Okay, because it
I couldn't see it, but I could hear you.
Yeah, it happened a couple of times to you too. So editor, digital content producer, and now podcast host we just launched a podcast October 1st called Ask This Old House. It's a spinoff from the show that's on PBS, and I interview people. Write in. We cull through the questions, and I interview somebody in each episode about some maintenance question or issue that they have, and then I go and interview the respective expert from our crew to answer it. And the goal with the podcast is to reach a different audience than the show reaches, as well as I think it'd be interesting to our current audience as well, but to make like more digestible chunks of information. So the episodes are 10 to 15 minutes long, versus our other podcast, which Kevin O'Connor, our show host, does. We had season 1 last year, and we're just starting season 2 now.
No, I did actually lose them.
Of the house,
You're just starting season 2 now.
Yeah. Oh, did I break up?
Yeah, I heard you're just starting season 2, and then it cut out, and it's still cutting out for us. man. Still loading. He'll be back in a second. Are you there? I think I might take this opportunity to, oh, he left. And now we're going to invite him right back. I was going to make a funny joke about taking this opportunity to thank our sponsors that we don't have.
Sorry about
Beautiful.
that. I don't know what happened.
So we heard something about you were going into the second season of your long form podcast.
Yeah.
Before we talk about that, do you guys post these podcasts on IGTV?
No, we don't.
Someone has requested that you do.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea, especially yours because they're small clips.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it all audio,
it's all audio. But we'll look into that because now with COVID, we're doing everything virtually now. So they're essentially Zoom, my calls are on Zoom. I think it'd be tricky because the calls are longer than the episode ends up being. Everything gets cut, and I think the cuts are easier to make in audio than they would be in video. So probably short answer is, as I talk it out, it's probably not going to happen.
Sorry, John. I do want to hear about the long form because I'm fascinated with what happens when you have production value as part of what you do. Because I don't have any, right? We're doing this live and it's going to go up. And I was listening to your podcast and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Like that podcast must have taken extended number of days to create based off of the back and forth of like, all right, we're going to go tell us your problem. We're going to go get the solution. We'll come back to you and we'll talk to you about this. Like, tell me about how that process happened.
It's actually very quick. So my conversation with the homeowner is 15 minutes long, if that. And then I go and I talk to the expert for half an hour, maybe an hour if we really get into it. And then the podcast producers, edit it down, and I maybe retrack a couple of lines here and there for transitions, just to make it all kind of come together. But it's all in all, from my standpoint and my time in, it's probably a couple hours per episode, but all the work's being done on the back end with the editors, the producers who are putting it all together and writing the lines to make it all connect.
Yeah.
And so it is. And we work with Rococo Punch, who is they're the production company for the show, both shows, both Clear Story and Ask This Old House podcast. And they're a podcasting company out of Boston, and they're awesome. They're so great to work with. They're great producers. They've worked on a lot of different things, have launched some pretty big podcasts like Modern Love. A couple of them worked on Car Talk for a while. So there's a vast amount of experience and knowledge there that's I feel really lucky to work with.
That's awesome. What's the name of that company again?
Rococo Punch. ROC. I can't spell out loud. I gotta write it down.
I'll Google it. Rococo Punch.
Rococo Punch.
Because I've often played with the idea of what it would be like if I produced this thing, and what kind of content you might be able to get if you like. So I'll give them a call and at least we'll start the talk.
Yeah.
So tell me about the long form one.
Yeah. So Clear Story. Clear Story is. We did season 1 last year. I'm one of the co-producers on that show, and Kevin is the host, Kevin O'Connor. And there we really take a deep dive into a topic, a question. We're looking for surprising stories, shedding light, like a Clear Story window. The whole concept is the clear story window that sheds light into a house. That's the idea of behind the podcast. We want to shed light on topics that you wouldn't necessarily think about, or take a topic that you would think about, like water, and let's really look at it and dissect it and talk to interesting, knowledgeable people in that space. Like the first episode we did, Kevin interviewed Charles Fishman, who wrote the name of the book is escaping me now, but he's like the preeminent expert on water, and has this whole discussion about why we're not running out of water, which was really, really interesting. And then his sound up was like, that the water you're drinking is dinosaur pee. Like it's crazy. It's fun. So we and then in another episode we talked. Kevin interviewed this guy who he salvages dead, felled trees that have floated to the bottom of the river in Florida, rivers in Florida, and just an incredible, really colorful character. I think the name of the episode is Deadheads, maybe, because that's what they were called when they, they cut the tops off of them and then they threw them when they were logging, they would throw the trees, group them together. They were deadheads because I'm pretty sure I remember correctly that it's been a while since I did the research for it. But and then some of them would fall off the log. There would be a log jam, and some of them would sink to the bottom of the river. And there's billions of board feet and millions of trees still way down bottom of reservoirs and rivers. So stuff like that. And season 2, we just had our first meeting today. We should be launching sometime in April.
It's just amazing for me to think about, like, a group of experts getting together, planning out this podcast. Like the most prep I've done is what we just did before this one. Like half the time I just I show up, put the camera on, and let's go.
It's good though. I mean, that we have to. I think in some ways, it's just what your audience wants. It's what audience are you going for? What audience? Who are you speaking to? Who are you going after? And what do you have time to do? You don't have time to do that. You're killing it every day. I mean, that's what I do. That's what I do every day. So it's and that, that's what we do every day. So it's two ends of the spectrum. It's like me spraying my little pantry here at night.
That's fair.
I didn't take the hardware off the window when I sprayed it because I was just not paying attention, and now I took it off and I'm gonna fix it. But it's stuff like that.
So what is the creative process at this old house, and for you, what does that look like?
Well, it's varied. It depends on what we're creating. I mean, for me, the process is really messy. I'm a hand note journaling, writing things out kind of person. I've always been that way. I've got yellow pads all over my office full of ideas and notes and everything. And but it depends. Like if an assignment, when I first got here, part of my job was to create these pro to pro videos, and we would have a sponsor like Festool wanted to, they wanted to support our teaching in ways that were interesting, and in a video that was specific to a project that could utilize some of their tools. So I would just brainstorm ideas for those, or listen carefully to, kind of pay attention. I'm on all the calls for our shoots for the show. So I'm always on the lookout for possibilities to piggyback on something that's going to be happening at a shoot, or hear about a project. Jeff Sweener at the time, I remember we were working on our Westerly project, and Jeff was talking about these tapered columns that he was doing, and I just had this. Sometimes I just see stuff, like I just saw this whole. I saw, like, it sounds stupid, but that's kind of what happens for me.
I love it.
Just that, track saw on making those tapered columns, and I was like, we should, and then have a conversation and back and forth. And I think for the show, our showrunner and producer is John Tomlin and Sarah Ferguson. There are certain parts of the remodeling process and renovation process that are always happening, that are going to happen on every show. There's always going to be kitchen renovation. There's always going to be HVAC system upgrade and all that sort of thing. So they know what, we've got Rich Ruthui, Tom Silva, Jeff Sweener, if it's one of his projects, or Charlie Silva, it's his project, Mauro Enrique, Jen Nawada, Heath. They know general topics that they want to do segments on, and they just listen to the experts talk about what they're going to be doing. I
can hear you.
Okay. I've got full connection right now.
Oh, there you're back.
All right, good. So for the show, it really starts with the experts telling the producers what is happening, and then the producers going, well, that would be interesting. Let's do that. Tommy, how are you going to make those corbels? Well, I'm going to do this. Well, all right. Let's do that. Yankee gutter, it kind of happens. Oh, Colleen. Hi, Colleen. One of my colleagues, the best.
What's amazing to me is everything that you're describing about this process of how you come up with stuff. This old house entire process. It's the completely opposite from the HGTV stuff, right? Like, you guys, it's not contrived. You are documenting what's gonna happen, whether you're there or not.
Right, exactly.
And that's what we do with my social media. Is I'm documenting what we're doing, whether there's a camera there or there's not.
Mm-hmm.
And you could juxtapose that to this HGTV stuff, where it's like the most contrived thing you've ever heard, and there's like whole like horror story blogs about all the like afters, and a year after the project happens, how it all falls apart because it's all fake.
Yeah.
Does that stuff, you guys talk about that stuff, or it's just
not really?
You just know what you're doing?
I don't. Yeah, I think we just do what we're doing. I don't. I don't know enough personally about.
And I shouldn't. I should not blanket an entire network. That's not fair at all.
No. But to your point, though, it's. I think that it gets back to what we were talking about earlier. What we're trying to do, our goals are different. I think that what we're doing, like you said, like we just keep doing what we've been doing and what we know how to do, which is let our trades shine. Put them in the spotlight. Kevin likes to say that the house is the star, really. I think that Kevin, if you listen to this, you hear somebody, maybe if I misquoted you, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that's his that's one of the things he says. The house is the star, and the tradespeople are the stars, and and his job is to facilitate making all that make sense to the audience. But we, at the end of the day, it gets back to what we've been talking about: authentic voices.
I will say that the truth is the star. Like,
all right,
let's just
like
it's because that's what I mean. I think that's why 41 years is like, I mean, that's an undeniable achievement. Like, man. And it's not, it's a beautiful thing that the way that this old house has been able to do it by just documenting what was already going to happen, whether they were there or not.
Yep.
And I think it's a great analogy to, as we talk about this digital stuff and what's successful on social media, at least in my opinion and in my experience, is the authenticity. It is the just, hey, I was going to do this. I'll put a camera on it. I'll explain it. Maybe I'll make it a little interesting, but I'm not going to like contrive and make this thing happen that didn't actually happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that our pros, our experts love to teach. They love to share what they know. They're as genuine as anyone you can imagine. They're not TV actors. They're not, they're that's not who they are. And I've walked trade shows with Richard Trethewey and with Norm and with Tommy, and when they're talking to fans of the show, they're having a conversation with another tradesman or tradeswoman. Like, it's not it's that's where they meet everybody. And I think that too is why they've stood the test of time. And why people like yourself, who and Zach, and Tim, Kyle Stumpenhorse, all these guys, Annabelle Trades, like, they're genuinely love to share what they know. They love to share their process. You guys love to, you're embracing you're stepping into the community and just being part of it. And that's it. That's what I think. That's the growth. That's where things are scalable and where growth happens. It's not when you're trying to show up and do things to earn a following, you're not going to get it.
Oof.
You're not going to get it.
Too many people, and not people, examples of that I've seen, and it's hard to watch when you see that this person is not being truly authentic, and they're playing a part, or they're trying to be what they think people want them to be. Or as human beings, we can see through that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we can see that. And it's really cool that this old house has done what they're doing. And now I'm really interested in sort of what is this old house doing with social media. And that's your job. And where do you see it going?
Where do we see? So I contribute, less so now because I'm not on the road as much as I was, but we have a social media, awesome social media manager, Jessica Van Sack, who all that's happening on social is really her vision, and she is the guide. She's the captain of it. And Kevin was a big. Kevin has a great ability to see the long game and to see ahead, see what's happening, see what's coming. And so he's been involved in social media for longer than probably anybody else on the This Old House team. Tom Silva has 46,000 followers on Instagram now. I think 6 months ago he had 5 or 13,000 or something. I think everybody, we're getting Mark McCullough, who Mark likes to make fun of himself for, barely being able to turn his computer on and join a Zoom, which I don't, he says that openly, so I'm not speaking out of school here. But he's starting to post on Instagram, and Charlie Silva's got, he's posting regularly. So we're getting all of our experts as comfortable as they feel to be part of that process and that community that we're talking about, and show what's happening on their job sites, because we show one of Sweener's job sites, one of Charlie Silva's job sites, but they both have multiple jobs going on at one time. And same thing with Jen Nuada and Morrow and so and Nathan Gilbert, like all those guys we're encouraging them to, and they're enjoying it, engage with the audience, engage with their followers, and show what's happening on a daily basis. So that's one thing that's happening on social. There's talk about TikTok. I think I heard that. I'm pretty sure Kevin's on TikTok now. I think Tommy might be on TikTok now. I'm embarrassed to say I'm not really up on what's happening there at the moment. My responsibilities right now are pretty broad. Like I'm writing and editing a bunch of highly technical content for one of our partners for a project we're working on. I'm developing and producing my own video series on tools, which I hope to launch soon-ish. It's going to be called Tool Lab, and I'm contributing to social. Working on the podcast as a producer. I'm working on the other podcast as a producer and host. So I'm wearing a lot of hats right now, so I don't focus only on social. And I haven't been super active in my own account because I haven't really found that voice that we're talking about that I feel like is worth. I just haven't found that sweet spot yet where I feel like, what do people want to hear from me regularly? I don't know yet. So
it's not easy to figure that out.
No, and I don't want to just throw things up. That's why I've been sticking only to stories when I feel like I have interesting stuff going on or things I want to promote or talk about in stories. That's where I'm kind of focusing, and I need to start. I keep saying this, and I've said it many times to Jessica, and if she's listening, she's probably rolling her eyes at me, but I need to really hunker down and think about my own account and what it's going to be. But
well, you can come to our sales and marketing course where we talk all about that exact subject, and we help people get their social media plan together. But yes, I think it comes down to, like you said, you have to have a plan. Like,
yeah,
and you have to have a voice. Well, you are your voice, but like, let's be consistent. And like, what makes you special? Like,
right.
What is Chris? And then just beat the drum of that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for a person who does not work with their hands for a living, being as close and connected and having as much knowledge as you do. You're kind of like the go-between. Like, my wife is a scientist, and she has a master's, not a PhD, and she's much more on the like normal human side of the spectrum than like a lot of her colleagues. And her job is, like, I always tell her, like, your superpower is being able to sort of talk to the client and the scientists and like bring them together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sort of what you're doing is you have that unique opportunity you speak our language. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you can also like speak the average person's language. And as a passionate craftsperson, I know I've had to work a lot in the sales process to shut up about the actual technical stuff and listen more and talk to clients the way that they want to be talked to and not the way I want to be talked to.
It's tough. And when we first started producing the Ask podcast, on my first interview with the homeowner, I was asking some, I was being a tradesperson. I knew what, the expert was going to need to know to answer the question. So I started going there. Like, I was like asking all these, and the producers afterwards were like, yeah, not that interesting to listen to on a podcast. And so they encouraged me to back off more and have more of a conversation person to person, and more like be interested in who they are and their house. And like that's the thing. That's why people listen to podcasts. Really, they want to hear stories. They want to hear that connection. They don't want to hear technical stuff necessarily. Not to the level that you read in a fine home building article, which is where my mind goes quickly, because that's the way I think about things. So that's the nice thing about my work now, is that I get to step back and assess and recalibrate that voice. I had an opportunity to, I co-produced and was the host of a video series called The Idea House this year. We did 2 houses. One was with Cape Associates in Cape Cod, and the other was with Grey Rock Homes in Norwalk. And we followed the build just like we do in the show, except these were new builds from the ground up. And I played the role of host, and I was one of the producers on it too. And it didn't, I don't feel great about it. It didn't go well. I never found that voice. I didn't get an opportunity. I didn't get a chance to really hit that, make that connection that you're talking about. And I hope to get an opportunity to do it again, but it was intimidating, and there were a lot of things going on.
So without going as deep as you want on this, in the post-mortem, did you guys do a post-mortem?
Not yet.
What do you think? Like, if you had to guess, what do you think could have been different?
I think at the end of the day, it's what's driving the content, and I think when they're in that particular project, there were sponsors involved that there were some. It needed to be more about the process and the why of the process. And in my mind, the goals of sponsorship in that context I feel strongly would have been met, but it didn't get an opportunity to approach it that way, and because there were a lot of people involved in the background that
Yeah, I can understand that. In my I have a bit of experience with that whole thing, and I think there's no better. It's a new style of marketing now, right? They're like, I am a trusted craftsperson. I am using a tool that I would have used whether you paid me to use it or not, or whether you gave me a tool or you didn't. I was going to buy or have already bought that exact tool. And now when I use it authentically, like we talked about, and I think magically that's going to sell product. And a lot of times the brands, they just say, like, I want this to be a big extended commercial.
Yeah.
And I want it to just be like like just the way we'd write a commercial, but I want it long form. And it's definitely a new school way on social media of, I'm sure there's a word for it, but just the term of like someone using it that people trust, who would recommend it, and then just showing it being used instead of like selling it down someone's throat.
Yeah. And when you're The Rock or Kim Kardashian or whoever, you can say, this is what I'm gonna say, and like it or not, I'll only talk about it if I feel good. And at the end of the day, we all have to do that. I mean, I feel like we do that, but it's a trickier, it's a tricky thing to navigate. And I think a lot of people on here are trying to work that. I mean, every media brand I know in our industry, we're not unique in that we have sponsors for some projects, and everybody does. even the makers, some of the even the makers, even folks on here who are like yourself, who are everybody's getting approached with opportunities, and has to really, I don't begrudge anybody for considering them and embracing them when they come along, and as long as they're done thoughtfully and for the right reasons. But it's kind of the new normal now. People don't necessarily want to. I listened to a podcast. Ben Nueda was on. I think it was on Modern Craftsman. Maybe it was Made for Profit. I can't remember, but he was talking about this idea that eventually there aren't going to be any ads. It's just going to be product placement, and like that's how kind of thing. People are going to get sick of seeing ads. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think in certain landscapes that might be true. In certain places, like maybe on IGTV versus on streaming television. I'll sit through an ad on streaming television. I'll sit through 60 seconds of ads to get through the episode of Mad Men versus, I'm not gonna sit through that. And even on YouTube now, like I'll scroll through. If an ad pops up, it loses me. Like sometimes, depending on the video, and depending on when it shows up, a lot of times I'm off.
Yeah.
Awesome praise. What's up, Tim?
And I think we have like a hypersensitive, at least I know I do, reaction to salesy, like heavy push, as Gary Vee would say, buy my shit. The like that. I had somebody call me yesterday, and the way this guy started it was a pitch. The way he started it, like I was sick to my stomach, like instantly. And it was one of the best ones I've ever heard. And it might have actually been legit. But man, the way this guy had it down and was selling it, I was so turned off to whatever he was selling, whether it was good or bad.
Mm.
And I think that, like more and more as we get, like this podcast is free with no sponsors.
Yeah.
And there's lots of that. And the more that we're used to, like, the more you see my feed and no one's ever put a sponsor in there.
Yeah.
People expect to see this for free without sponsors.
Yeah.
And once they're there, it's like, now you're going to throw a sponsored thing in my face? Like, screw you, man. And I've been very cautious to not do that. We don't give out discount codes to stuff. I can't tell you how many times people want to do, like, the companies are like, yeah, we'll give you a discount code. You tell it to your followers. And I'm like, dude, I'm not. For 20% off your product or 10% off your product half the time, that doesn't make any sense.
I'm just curious. I'm like, I'm not advocating in either way. I'm just want to hear more about your thought process behind it. I mean, if it's something that you're using anyway, you still don't feel.
If it's something I'm using anyway, I have accepted free tools from brands where, like, I'm buying one and they're going to send me another one, or they're going to send me a product I already have one of. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to have, that's as far as I've gone. And I'm talking with people now about, but it's still the barrier, like the guiding principle is, do I deeply believe in this brand and this product? And do I buy it with my own money anyway, no matter what? And as soon as I lose that objectivity, I think I'm screwed. And I would hope all my followers go away, because I've built a following on being authentic. And, I don't have an agenda when I post about this tool. Like, this is the tool that I am a tool snob, and I understand what I'm looking for, and this fits that. And this is best practice, in my opinion. And the other thing I've been very cautious is to not get tied into one of those, right? If a better one comes out, I hope I'm able to stay open-minded and say, like, this is better, or not even say this is better, but say, hey, this is what we use now. And with the school, it's the same way. The school is $2,500 for a weekend for a person because we're not taking on sponsorship. And a lot of people have told me, like, you should take on sponsorship from the brands and charge way less. But then I'm like, well, now I'm beholden to a bunch of brands, and they're the ones driving the ship instead of the people who are paying to come learn. So it's a weird thing that I've had to like think a lot about and I'm much more cautious because my painting company pays the bills. And before anything, it is ZK painting, and the following is for getting paint jobs and building a following that way. So
smart.
I've not wanted to, and I just don't believe, like, I would never buy something because it's 10% off. And so I've had brands, even of brands of stuff that we do buy, who have come to me and said, like, we'll give a 10% off discount code for you. And I'm like, that's insulting to me. That would be insulting for if I was a follower of me, I would be insulted that ZK came out with, hey, give them this code and get 10% off. I'd be like, dude, what is that? But that's just like, I don't know. I always look at the world through my own lens anyway.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, that's all any of us can do. That's what makes life interesting. I do think it's an interesting question, and I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that there are people out there who are doing those kinds of things, and maybe it's because I know some of them personally. They've still maintained their authority, and I know that they're still, like, when I was at Tools of the Trade. Tools of the Trade had it's a sister publication for JLC. They had a reputation of just honest, authentic, unbiased feedback. And that's when I was at Fine Home Building, that same thing in terms of tools. Like, when we did a review at Fine Home Building, they would send the tools. We were doing a category review on jigsaws, let's say. They would send the tools, and usually we would send them back, or we would give them to somebody. That practice, I don't know what Fine Home Building does now, but at Tools of the Trade, you kind of, like, for me, when I was the editor there, this is something that my predecessor taught me, that you kind of need, like, if I'm supposed to be able to talk about all these tools, I kind of need to know, I need to have them, I need to know what they're like, I need to use them, and the budget isn't there to buy them. So the understanding was, like, if you send me tools, like, don't send them unsolicited, and if you do send me something, I'm gonna give my unbiased feedback on it. And if it's total, like, if I have nothing good to say about it for some reason, out of respect of the relationship, or I don't, and even to my audience, like, I didn't feel like it made sense to bash, like, Milwaukee came. I'm going on a tangent here, but I think it's still relevant.
This is gold. I love it because I thought a lot about it.
So Milwaukee came out with their first cordless finish nailers, and everybody's huge hoopla about them. This a few years ago, and we used them at the event, and we are like, oh, these are cool. These look interesting. But people were skeptical. Got them in our hands. I started using it, and I was like, this thing is terrible. Like, I could take 10 of them, put them over the rear axle of my truck in the snow, and get rid of the sandbags. Like, they were heavy. They were really heavy. They had terrible line of sight. They misfired a lot. They double fired holes, and I mean, they had bad kickback. It was poor balance. Absolutely nothing good to say about it. And I gave it to a contractor, and he was the same way. And I was like, I'm not going to review this. And a lot of people didn't. because what it just didn't it didn't it didn't it, there was so many there was so much other stuff to do and to look at and like places to put our energy. It wasn't worth it. And then Milwaukee got the feedback from me and others, and they revised it, they re-engineered, redesigned it, and their second generation of those nailers they're awesome. I can't say compare them to others and say they're the best, but just there was a huge improvement. So, but the point is, at Tools of the Trade, we got the tools, and like I did a huge in-depth review on 10-inch sliding compound miter saws, Capex, the Bosch, Glide, Delta, Hitachi, all of them, all the major brands. And my shop was full of 8 sliding compound miter saws, and every one of those manufacturers knew that I was going to give it a real legit test, and that's what happened. And we I gave I gave them away. Like gave the thing that I've learned since then is that manufacturers can't take tools back. They can't do anything with them. So they're generally, once they give them out, it becomes a liability issue if they're used. So anyway, it's interesting, and I'm thinking a lot about now, because as I start with this tool lab idea, I want to review some tools, because I think that I can do it in a way that is a little bit unique to what other folks are doing, and we can get feedback from the job sites, from some of our pros, and we can also offer other insights and thoughts on tools, like buying guides, or what's the difference between two things. What's the difference between the Martinez square and the Swanson Speed square? What's the difference? Why is one $250 and one is $15, or 20? So but there's no budget to buy all that stuff. So it's still going to come, still going to request the tools and give them the review. Just the best I can hope for is that being upfront and honest with people about it. Like, hey, I got this tool. And this is what I say in the videos. Like, I got this tool. It was given to me by the manufacturer with the understanding that I could speak openly and freely about it. So that's what I'm going to do. And, my hope is that that's going to resonate and work.
I love the idea of not giving bad reviews if they're only bad. Like I've had a number of products where they reach out and I'm like, first of all, I don't think that's a very good idea. Nothing about what you just told me is something I'm interested in, but if you want to send it to me. I'll give it to my guys. And if they like it, we'll talk about it, because why not?
Yeah.
I'm here to spread information. But all of those so far, none of them have surprised me, and we've just decided not to talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
Because what am I going to bash? What do I get out of bashing a company?
Right, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, it's with manufacturers. Here's my perspective, and people on here might agree or disagree. It's fine, but I like to think that I've worked to establish a mutually professional, like a professional working relationship with manufacturers. And it's respectful. It's I know you did put a lot of time and energy and thought and research into creating this, whatever it is. And that I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to use it. If I find flaws that don't seem right, I'm going to reach out to you and ask you, is this a manufacturing, potentially a manufacturing defect, whatever. Or I'm going to really fully understand how the tool works, how you meant for it to work, I'm going to read the manual if there's things I don't understand or I'm questioning. Like I'm really going to, I'm going to come at it as a professional, and you're going to get my perspective on it after I've done put a lot of time and a lot of work into it. And there's guys on here that are commenting right now, like Kyle and Tim Mueller, those guys, that's how they operate too. And at the end of the day, manufacturers may not be happy about what's said, but they can't say that I didn't, that I made it up, that I did it to try and get followers, that I did it to, for any other reason other than to offer genuine good editorial feedback. So
Love it. I have now we're gonna have to do. So there's so many tool reviews, like quality tool reviews, and you're in the trades, mostly in the carpentry construction stuff.
mm-hmm.
I'm hard pressed to think of much in the painting world.
Scott Burt, 802 paint, is that his handle?
Yes, 802 paint, 802 like underscore paint, I think.
Yeah, they do. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No,
it just came to me.
On social, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's not any, and I'm gonna look into doing that just for my own interest, like paint brushes. Like I can't wait to get. I'll go buy myself one of 7 different paint brushes, and let's rate them on, X number. Like how long of a cut can you make with one dip of a paintbrush? Like how easy is it to like trying to get some like objective data on paintbrushes or rollers. I've talked about the rollers in house for our own purposes quite often, where we just need to finally have a temporary wall. Now we can do some stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for an unbiased professional opinion, as Castle Construction just said. Like my horse in the race is my honesty.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like as long as it can be, what I'm most care about is protecting the truth. Then, I'll do a review.
Yeah, and that's And somebody said on here that bad reviews save people time and money. Fair. That's a fair thing to say. It's just that when there's other things that you need to spend, like for me, that I need to be doing, other tools I need to review, I can't, somebody else is going to give the tool, is going to give that tool a review, or maybe even, is going to put it in through its paces in a different way, than I was able to. And it's just, you got to pick your battles really at the end of the day.
And I think as a consumer, we should always, this is true always, like you have to be a savvy buyer and a savvy consumer. And if you can't find any positive reviews on a tool, that should be the same as a negative review.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need me to tell you how bad that tool is. If you can't find anybody talking good about it, it's one of those things where when you start to do this at scale, you realize what is it? Well, I'm going to spend my time bad mouthing this over here based off my experience. Like, I trust my honest opinion of when I see good things probably more than I would in bad. Maybe there's a different application for this that I don't see, or we don't use it that way, or and to throw a company under the bus, you really have to. You see those people on Instagram that do it, and every time I'm like, is that the best use of our time and our attention that we have from the world? I don't know. I don't know.
There's also what blows my mind too is the amount of I've seen reviews before on things where maybe it's the Metabo. I'm reviewing the Metabo HPT small slider right now, and somebody I saw a review once where somebody was just bashing it because they pulled the head forward and the thing tipped forward, and like but if they had looked a little harder or read the manual, they would have seen that there was a adjustable foot in the front of the saw underneath the handle that they could have just opened up, and that was its purpose, you know? So I get so mad. I get so mad, and I'm putting myself on the spot here, and you know, maybe I'll hold myself to a standard, but I like the people I've worked with, like at Fine Home Building and you know, Toolbox Buzz, Toolaholics, awesome at this. Tim Mueller is amazing at this. Like, you have to really, really know the ins and outs of it and understand it, and you gotta look at the manual if you're gonna talk.
What a
If you're gonna say that a tool is missing something, then you better be sure it's missing it. If you're gonna say that that a tool doesn't have an adjustable foot on it, then you better be right. Because if I see it in the video and I see it has an adjustable foot on it, and like, you've lost your credibility for me.
Yeah.
Totally lost it.
And like
Steinberg
just said, like, we have different parameters that I am judging good. Someone just asks, like, what's the best, or people ask me all the time, what's the best X?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's an impossible question to ask. I need way more context than what is the best trim paint?
Yeah.
Do you have a short timeline to recoat in? Do you have, like, what are your parameters that we're going to judge best based off of?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that can vary greatly. And what I don't like is when you see people who are sort of skirting that fact. They're acting like their parameters are the only parameters.
Yeah.
And making these big, broad blanket statements of negativity or even positivity without, you know, and that's, again, it goes back to, like, we as consumers of content have to be very savvy and understand, where are people coming from? What are their motivations? What are their financial incentives?
Yeah.
What are the incentives in general? And it's tricky.
It's interesting you say that, because I always think, like, I just assume, and I'm probably naive to assume this, but like, when I go to look for something, if I'm going to buy a laptop or you know, my wife's watching, so she's laughing at me, I'm sure, upstairs when she hears me say this, because I'm a big researcher. I like to, like, I look at multiple sources and take the data, their perspective on it, and look for the things that are important to me. And this is the thing that Toolbox Buzz and Conquer Carpenter does really well. I think that, like, when they review, they do a categorical review, a head-to-head test. They say, these are the things that we ranked, and this is the way we tested, and these are the things, and based on these, this is what we felt were important. But if ergonomics is more important to you, then you should reconfigure the data that we came up with, and you should make your decision there. We're not wrong. I'm not wrong because I said, you know, I don't think that it performs well in this way, because that's not important to you. It's just, that's when I'm using it. This is what's important to me, and what I think people who are looking for these things are going to use it for. So you need to, you know, go look. I just assume that people aren't just listening to me. I'm like one of multiple voices that they're gonna cull. But
I think it's important that whoever is making the statements does, like, qualify where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. It's when it gets sketchy is when you see people who are, like, sort of almost trying to hide where they're coming from.
Yep.
You can see they're doing some mental gymnastics, or they're doing something to sort of hide where they're coming from, and it taints the results. So a very famous example in my business is Consumer Reports, and what Consumer Reports report on paint has Behr and had Behr, I don't know what the last one, but had Behr at the top of the chart number of times. And early in my career, I had to have a conversation about Behr paint as the top rated one more times than I'd like to admit. And I used the analogy that I used for the clients was in the piece that I think is disingenuous, at least for not having like a statement ahead of time that says like 80 to 85% of a paint job is labor and 15% of a paint job is material costs. So, but this or Consumer Reports, they're talking about only the paint in a vacuum. So the analogy I'd use is like, if you look at the rating for a blender on Consumer Reports, the Vitamix, which is 3 times the price of the Ninja, have the same rating. Well, that's because one's going to last 3 times longer than the other one.
Yeah.
And so they equal out price-wise. And so they both get the same rating because there's no labor involved in a blender.
Right.
A blender's a blender. So if one lasts 3 times longer than the other and it costs 3 times as much, they're considered equal. But with paint, it's not the case. With paint, if I have a paint that will last twice as longer as another paint and the labor stays the same in that equation, well, now the inferior paint actually costs a lot more because I'm repainting again. But that's like, first of all, I had to do a lot of homework to get to that answer, right?
Yeah.
To understand how the heck did Behr get to the top of this list? And I looked at enough Consumer Reports and did enough homework where it was like, oh, I see what they did here. And then it's like I had to spend 15 minutes talking this client down from Behr. And, you know, if they had just like had a little like, I don't know, what do they call it? Disclaimer that kind of said like, don't forget this.
Yeah.
But again, you have to be savvy consumers these days.
Zach, this is exactly why I go to the paint store and my wife doesn't. Because my wife is not coming home with an $85 gallon of paint ever.
It's crazy, and because that is the truth. And so, like we were talking about before, I think that the domestic paint manufacturers have enough evidence, right? They're sure they're doing sample sizes of people and all those things. What do they call the words escape me, and they figured out that like. People will want to go in and they want to see the high price and they want to see a low price, and then they want to find something in the middle and walk out feeling like they got a good deal.
Yeah. And
I don't necessarily think that benefits the painting industry, because the piece of that puzzle that they don't see when they see 85, 75, 65, 55, 45, 35 for price tags per gallon, they're not seeing that the labor is exactly the same across all of them. And, you know, I don't know whose fault that is for not communicating that well, but I'm here to scream it from the rooftops for anyone who will listen.
I applaud you for bringing that up, for sounding that horn. I'm on your team with that.
We were talking about this before, and you know, as a passionate crafts person, as a passionate a paint nerd, I go to bat and I sell most of the time, I'm selling fine paints of Europe to clients every time we talk. And a lot of them haven't heard of it. And, you know, it's not a national, you know, it's not a massive corporation. It's a small company, but they have the highest quality paint sold in America. It is a single component paint that I'm aware of. And maybe it is twice the price per gallon, but it's 2 to 3 times the longevity. And sure, you can get, and I know you can get way more aesthetic value out of it. But I have to be so passionate about that, because in order for me to go to the client and sell it, I have to go through this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Quite often. And, you know, I don't think that my industry is full of a bunch of people. I know they're not full of a bunch of people who want to go to bat for the quality of the paint when they go to the sale. They're going to bat for their company, right? I want you to hire me. And oftentimes the price per gallon is a thing that can be moved around to get a job with the lower price point.
Yeah.
Tough.
But like you said, it's such a small percentage really relative to the job, to the cost of the job. But on that note, what we talked about earlier too is just that like your clients don't know what they want sometimes, or that's what they, like that's even possible. Like that handrail that you did, like that is unbelievable to me. I've seen it before.
Got a little pause there. He'll be back.
I see there's a little snag. Okay,
All
there you're
right, I
back.
hear you again. We're back.
All right. So it's when they see what's possible, and like that's your role is showing people what they can have, what they can achieve, what they can use, what the look can be. But it's tough to communicate that, especially when you're talking about budget.
It is, and social media is our friend now.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was telling you, like in my experience in the painting industry, New York City and the suburbs of Greenwich, Connecticut and Darien, they have a very high standard for quality painting. Quality painting, you can look around, go house to house, and you can see lots of examples of really high quality paint. So if you come from that area, you have an idea of what good looks like. But if you are in, many other places in the country and you don't have that as the standard of quality, you may have never seen it. And so there's a group of people who value high quality painting and finishing, but if they've never seen it, they don't know, right?
Yeah.
But everyone, Wolf has done an amazing job marketing their products, and everyone sees a Wolf Sub-Zero range, and it's like, when I go to want a nice thing in my house, I'm going to get nice appliances. And the painting industry, unfortunately, we've not done an awesome job at copying whatever the appliance companies have done, because those guys do a really good job of when a client wants something good, they know where to spend their money. And so I'm hoping that what we're doing on Instagram is helping show the world, or the internet, what is possible, now, if you have the budget.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You definitely are. You're educating everybody. I mean, I consider, like, I've been in a lot of different jobs, a lot of different environments around the country. I've gotten to see some, various levels of work, and what I consider really, I've been lucky enough to look over the shoulders of some, obviously the best in the business. And like, I didn't know that rail, it's like, that is not a brushed finish. I didn't know it was possible that you get a brushed finish, that you get a finish like that with a brush.
Yep. And now we're here to show, like we posted again today, same thing, like this is possible. And like we talked about before, I love it because there's a bunch of other painters across the country who are seeing how we approach what we do, hopefully more than even what we do. And they're able to take pieces of hopefully our approach, our passion and our thoughtfulness and our trial and error and our elevating little pieces along the way. Even if they don't have a market that can withstand a $6,000 front door paint job, it can withstand some dollar paint job, and they can take all their skills and passion and try to get better. And like, man, we were talking about, like, what does good look like? What does good look like paint job wise? But what does good look like as far as professionalism?
Yeah.
And before, it's like what you were talking about this before. Like, we only saw the people that we saw in our neighborhood, and I only learned about painting from my bosses. That was all I knew was possible.
Yep.
Now, if I'm a young painter, I can go on social media and I can see a whole list of painters, and I can see all of what they're doing. And, hopefully I believe it will raise the level.
I think so for sure. I think it definitely is. And it's the thing that I love about it too is we're getting to see practices around the world, and learn how to frame from a framer who built on the West Coast, but not the way Tim Mueller does it, and I get to see that regularly and learn more. So it's cool.
It's like the little things. It's just we learn and we implement new things into my company all the time. I'll be watching somebody's story or somebody's feed, and I'll send it to one of my guys like, "Hey, check that out. Maybe we could do some version of that, or that's an interesting way." And it's that idea sex that people talk about, like different things coming together. And the network effect of the internet is special, and it's being applied to the paint world and the carpentry world, and everyone's, and the people who care are all getting better.
Yep.
And now the real challenge is, how do we get more people in that care?
Oh, I mean, we've solved that problem. We'll have the skilled trades issue.
Yeah, drop the mic.
Yeah. It's definitely
we'll win a Nobel Prize for our research here tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It gets to that just that idea though of like we were talking about earlier too, how being proud to say what you do for a living. You mentioned that you used to, kind of shy away, and I used to do it too. When I was working in the trades, I would say very in a very insecure way that I was a carpenter, that I was a contractor. I didn't feel great about it. Part of it was because I wasn't working at the level that I felt warranted that kind of pride, but it was also because of just the societal view of the trades, and it's we got to change that.
We're going to. I have an immense amount of faith that we can turn this thing around, and
I think we are.
We have a platform now. All of us, you do, I do, everyone watching here. It's going to be harder and harder to hide, and I'm hoping to be able to inspire, and we're continuing to figure out ways to inspire the younger generation and to attract and retain the top talent that I know I have in my company and I know exists. But how do we find them, and how do we draw them into painting?
Yeah. How do you find? How are you getting people into your company?
So I use Indeed. It's in a little bit. So Instagram is the key piece. A well-written Indeed ad is a huge piece. It talks about the type of person that we're looking for, the type of like core characteristics that what makes you tick. Very Ernest Shackleton type of ad. That his famous one about going to Antarctica or whatever. People can look it up. It's pretty interesting. But so I have this ad, and it talks about the type of things that make you tick. And is this you? And is this you? And is this you? And is this you? And then I have a little bit of stuff about the role, and you don't need experience, or if we're hiring someone that does, we really don't do it anymore. But what goes on there? But most of it's about the type of person. And then at the bottom it says, for brownie points, send me a DM on Instagram. And then the way Indeed works, you get many applicants, and I don't even check Indeed. I just wait for DMs on Instagram. DMs. So,
nice.
Because it shows that they're not just clicking resumes and sending them out. It shows that they have gone above and beyond through a little bit of adversity and a little bit of friction. They were able to overcome that friction, right? Which is what we want out of employees in our world of things are never the same, and we always have some little things come up. I want to see people who can actually overcome some friction. And then once they go to my social media, it's like very clear what we are doing. And I hope, and I'm so far it's been my experience, that it's weeds out people who are not into also doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I get the DMs, I probably hired 75% of people who have sent me the DMs. I've interviewed every single one of them. And one of my leads, Patty, you know, she's not a young woman. She started an Instagram account to send me a DM because the ad I wrote spoke to her so much.
That's awesome.
So, you know, I think that's like, there are ways to find these people who are into what we do. But it's not, Painter, like, you better have this, you better have this, you better have this, you better have this. And like, you know, it's like a lot of those ads that I always responded to as a young person and that I see now is just like, have to have this many years experience, have to have a license, have to have, like, you know, and it's all about the paint company and the job that the owner wants, and not about what is it that drives you, person. Like I always say, I have to sell to my employees as much as I have to sell to my clients. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? Like, here's the vision, guys. Here's what I like. I have to balance my sales in both areas and get the buy-in and build culture and all those things. I can't just be like, oh, you're a body, go do this stuff over there. Like, and yell at you if you don't.
It's so smart. I mean, your approach is so smart. It's different than, I mean, I wonder if I had a boss like you when I was in the trades, if I'd still be doing it. It's kind of how Sweener operates too. Jeff is huge on hiring people for who they are. And I think that, like, that it's part of why I'm still doing what I'm doing, I think, is because when I got to Fine Home Building, my bosses were exactly that way. I didn't have any skill as an editor, zero. I can write, and I knew construction a little bit. That was it. I had no idea how to write a cut line. I didn't know how to take photos. I didn't know how to edit an article. I didn't know how to put an article together. I didn't even know what, like, made a good article. I didn't know any of that stuff, but they hired me because of me, all that stuff. And that is huge. And it took a while for me to feel comfortable not being good at any of the stuff that I needed to do for my job. And it took Kevin Ireton saying to me, it's gonna take you 2 years to even understand what this job is. So, like, stop thinking you're gonna be good at it, because you're not. Like, he was basically telling me he wasn't gonna fire me I had 2 years to get it, like, to get my act together, which was so generous. And it's that idea that, bringing people in. And I think that, like, that's huge for any career, but I think it's particularly rare and lacking in the trades, because you and I, a lot of people in our at our age and we grew up with someone, like, throwing a circular saw in your hand and being like, go rip me, go rip 2 feet off that sheet of plywood. Oh no, don't, what are you doing? What are you cutting it that way for? I said, rip it, not cross cut it, like that kind of stuff, like that was the, and I know there are job sites that are still like that. And it's got to change, I think, with people in your position, leaders at your level, to show a different way. And that's how you're going to keep people.
Yeah. And that's what we were talking a little bit about this. I think so the people who stayed in the trade then, right? If that's the way you were being taught, the people who stayed in the trade were just like people who had a tougher skin and could handle trauma and abuse with a higher threshold of pain tolerance.
Yeah.
Like
emotional,
like, were you, did, like, I don't know. Did you grow up in a healthy home with healthy emotional like boundaries? If so, the trades probably aren't for you because you're going to get screamed at and hammers thrown at you, and you're going to go, "That's
Yeah.
not okay."
Yeah.
But and that's where I think like this idea of passed down trauma is not like cool. It's not just because your boss screamed at you and you made it through it and you're still alive and you happen to be in business is not like success. That does not mean that's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to a lot of guys who are like, well, I had this happen to me and look at me. And I'm like, dude, that does not mean that was best practice. It does not mean you found success because of the trauma. Like, that's what a trauma victim says. Like,
Yeah.
Instead, it's like we need to be professionals like every other business.
Yep.
If we want to attract competent, high quality individuals, and we need to treat people, like humans. And we need to tell them why we're doing what we're doing. And we need to have some understanding and show some guidance. And like screaming at someone and throwing a hammer at them doesn't keep around the awesome people anymore.
No.
And
there's too many opportunities. There's too many other places for people to go. There's too many other things they can do. Yeah.
I have to create an attractive place to come. Just you look at the tech companies. They had this problem before us, right? There was a lack of qualified programmers in Silicon Valley, and probably still is because of the way that it's been growing. And so they were like, oh, we got to start figuring out how to attract and retain top talent. And those guys are smart and analytical, and they started figuring out like, oh, let's make pool tables and nap pods and like, and magically they still get work done because they have the data to prove it. And and they've attracted and retained top people, and it's a softer, more human environment.
Yeah.
And I've tried to look at some of that and try to incorporate the same things in my company of like, let's try to treat people as human beings and see if we can't get more with honey than we can with vinegar.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's good. It's good stuff, man. I'm glad to hear that about you and your company.
We're trying, man. And just like everybody else, we're doing our best. I've taken up a lot of your time. So I'm still halfway through my notes. I think we could go for quite a while longer, but we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
And but we asked the same three questions to everybody at the end of every episode. We tailor a couple of them a little bit, but the same general question. And the first two are no sweat, and the third one is the scary one. See that foreshadowing? That's that literary tool. No, your English background, way smarter than me. So the first thing I need is a DIY tip. And I guess this is actually good for you. I need a DIY tip for something around the house. We could keep it painting related, or if you just have one that you're really passionate about that you wish more people knew, I'd take that one too.
Spend some time readjusting your old windows. Don't replace them. It's kind of a big one, but and use storms. I say this as the cold air's blowing on my.
It's funny that you say that. I have the exact same problem at my house, and when I lay on the couch, I gets a little bit of a gust, and I should probably be adjusting my windows.
Yeah. That's not a great one. That's the only thing that's coming to me right now. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's fine, man. We're 2 hours into a podcast at the end of a long day. That's a good answer. All right. What is your favorite piece of, usually we say, depending on what you're in, like trade-specific paraphernalia, whether it be a tool, a piece of equipment, a piece of software that helps you do what you do. Let's keep it to what you do for a living. What is your favorite piece of tool? What is your favorite tool, piece of equipment, software, paraphernalia, if you will?
Lately, the thing that's coming to mind that I've been using regularly and I absolutely love is Monday. It's a project management software. I love it. That's awesome.
Monday.
Yeah, Monday.com.
I'm going to have to check it out because we're about to implement a new.
A side one, we use Slack for work. And I just learned from our art department that when you do a call like this on Slack and someone shares their screen, you can actually draw on you can use your cursor and draw on whatever diagram that they have. I thought that was awesome. So Monday
Well,
in
I
Slack.
just set up Slack today. We just deleted. We had tried. I did a poor attempt at implementing Slack into my company a while back. And so I had all these old threads and I had all these old employees still in there. So today, Carney and I, we went through Slack. We emptied out we archived the old threads. We're getting our work order plan set up to go in Slack because I was me and a painter for most of my career. And so project management was easy. I was always there. Communication was easy. We were always looking at each other. And now as we have more people and I've dropped the ball and not giving my team structure. And so we've been trying to we've been devising a system that we can actually execute, and Slack is going to be a big part of it.
Nice. Cool.
But maybe I'll look into, so you use Monday and Slack together?
Slack's more of a communication tool for like me and my colleagues, like regularly. So instead of emailing back and forth, I hate email. But
Me too.
Monday's more the project management tool, and you can really customize it to an nth degree, I think.
All right, Carney, that's what we're doing on Thursday. We're going to explore Monday.
Nice.
Wow, that's a weird sentence to say. All right, that's awesome. I think that's going to be beneficial to some people. And then now the last one, the most important one, you're clearly an expert. You're an awesome guy. You've demonstrated your knowledge and expertise. So now we need to bring you back down to reality, and you need to tell us like your most embarrassing moment in business. We've had many stories told that had never seen the light of day on this show. I shared the first time around that I painted the wrong house.
Oh my God.
So this is a safe place to be vulnerable. There's only a few people listening and watching. So if there's any thing that you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah. I was residing a house in a development on my own. It was a side job I had. Actually, this was when I was working on my own. And it was for a judge. She was lovely, really great client, wonderful person. But she was a judge. Like she was kind of she was a big deal. And I was installing I was doing something. I don't know if I was putting some clapboard back up or I think I was nailing in the clapboards, and all of a sudden I heard just a cascade of things breaking. And it turned out that she had a large collection of dishes hung on the wall, and I knocked every single one of them down and broke all of them. And I had to call her and tell her that something happened. And she was super nice about it, but I'm sure it was a lot of money.
Oh man, that's I'm sorry to hear that. Sounds like it's been long enough that we can all laugh.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Was she cool about it?
She was so nice. Like, couldn't have been nicer. Could not have been nicer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. See, the moral of the story is everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much
Zach,
for coming on here. This has been awesome.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, and look forward to chatting more in the future.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
Right. Thanks. You too.